Hey everyone. Today I am here to talk about the 215 Indigenous children that were recently found in the mass burial at the Indian residential school in Kamloops. It has taken me this past week to process my thoughts and to get to a point where I felt strong enough to speak openly about it. Please bear with me as this topic is really hard for me to talk about, and it's never been so hard for me to find my words. Every word just feels like it has a weight to it, and it's been really hard for me to process my thoughts around this. In fact, I wasn't sure if I should post about this at all. And I wanted to make sure that if I did speak out about this, it wasn't just to be heard, that it was to offer a deeper understanding of the residential school system. Because, like I've said it before, I believe that where there is understanding, there is compassion, and racism dies in the face of compassion. Therefore, I wanted to share with you how the residential school system has not only affected the entire Indigenous community, but how it has affected me personally. First of all, I want to say my heart goes out to all the residential school survivors and to anyone affected by the residential school system. I just want to make a quick disclaimer that this video contains sensitive content and can be triggering to anyone who's been affected by the residential school system. This video is intended for anybody who is wanting a deeper understanding of the residential school system and how it has affected the Indigenous community. So if you have really been feeling the effects of the news this past week, I encourage you to move past this video. I have added the 24-hour residential school helpline to the caption below, and I encourage you to share that helpline number with your following, and so anybody who needs it has access to that number. Finally, people are starting to understand why it's so triggering to us when people say things like, "get over it." I think for so long, people didn't understand or believe our stories about residential schools. And I think it's only to those people that this news came as a surprise. When I read that headline for the first time, as horrific as it is and as devastating as it is, it did not come as a surprise to me. What was a surprise to me was that the government wasn't trying to hide it, because our voices are still being silenced. And it's hard for me to talk openly about that because my platform means a lot to me. It gives me the ability to speak with you guys about topics like this. And I have to censor everything that I say. That's why it's so important for us to get your guys' support on topics like this. We want these platforms to know that the truth is important to us and to our entire nation, not just the Indigenous community. That's why we need your support. Because this truth, as hard as it is for us to face, it creates understanding. And like I said, where there's understanding, there is compassion, and racism dies in the face of compassion. Residential school survivors are called survivors for a reason, because they had to live through these times. Many of our parents had to live through these times. Being torn from their parents' arms, forced to cut their hair, punished for speaking their language or any means of their culture. Having to watch their friends and or siblings going missing. Many of them were beaten to death. Many of them committed suicide. Many of them died running away from the schools trying to get home. And all unaccounted for. Many people don't know about the mind manipulation that was going on at the schools. Many of the kids were told things like, if you don't worship or if you don't do your chores, your parents are going to die. And in many of the schools, they were performing experiments on the kids to try and find out the minimal nutrition required for survival. My father is a residential school survivor, and many of my relatives are residential school survivors. And what I'm about to share with you is very personal. It's something I've never shared with you guys before, but I think this is the time for me to share it with you guys. And I think that it will help many of you understand how the residential school system has affected me personally, how it can affect anyone affected by residential school systems, and how it has the potential to affect every generation to come. So, as the daughter of a residential school survivor, the one thing that affects me the most is not having the knowledge to cope with my spirituality. And I know that may sound so foreign and so strange to many of you, but losing our traditional ways, our ceremonies, the language has had a huge effect on how I move about the world. I know every person who's affected by this copes with it differently, and I guess the way I cope with it is I have really bad OCD, clinical OCD, since I was about 9 years old. And that's just because I've always had this deep sense of spirituality, but I don't understand it, and I don't at this time have the means to understand it, and I try everything I can to learn everything I can to understand it. But it breaks my heart to know that so much of that knowledge that would have helped me may have been lost in the residential school system. And there's some things in life that the Western medicine can't heal. And that's why it's so important for us to bring back ceremony, share all the knowledge that we know, and do everything that we can to keep our language. Not knowing ceremony, not knowing the traditional ways, and my language has made me feel so lost at times. And I know that I'm not the only one who feels this way. But that's why it's so incredibly important for us to have support in revitalizing our culture so that anyone who feels the same way that I do, anyone who's affected by the residential school system, has the knowledge, has the means to heal. So, moving forward, I would just like to thank you all for sticking with me this long and for being so open to understanding things from maybe a different perspective that you haven't thought of yet. And I encourage you to ask yourself, what does this mean for Canada? What does this mean for you? And what does this mean for anybody living on Native land? I would also love for your support in helping us push the government to check every residential school. And not only around the school, but between the school and the communities, because like I said, many of the children that were lost in the residential school system died trying to get home. And every child deserves justice. So, just a reminder to anybody who's been affected by the news this week and by the residential school system, the helpline is down below. Keep in mind that you're not alone in this, and I encourage you to, if you need to call that line and to talk to someone if you need to. And my heart goes out to all of you who've really been feeling the effects of this week and who have felt the effects of the residential school system for your entire lives. My heart goes out to you. Keep in mind, you are stronger than you think. And I just want to say much love. I'm sending you lots of love, light, and strength in these crazy times. And again, thank you so much. Koyanakpak. Thank you.